Leaving home is rarely about adventure. It's about survival. It's about stepping into a world that doesn't care whether you succeed or fail. For Ethan Marshall, leaving Willow Creek was both a dream and a punishment, a journey that promised freedom but delivered nothing but challenge. Ethan's small room smelled faintly of pine cleaner and old books. His backpack lay on the bed, empty except for a notebook, a few pencils, and the envelope containing the first $100 he had ever saved. Clara, his mother, sat quietly at the kitchen table, her hands folded, eyes shadowed with both pride and fear. "Are you sure about this, Ethan?" she asked softly. He nodded. "I have to try. I can't stay here. Not if I want more than this town can give me." She didn't argue. She simply placed a hand on his shoulder, strong and steady despite exhaustion. "Then go," she whispered. "Just promise me you'll survive." Ethan swallowed hard. It was the heaviest promise he had ever made, a promise not to himself, but to the woman who had carried him alone through every hardship, every insult, every lonely night. The bus station smelled of diesel and old coffee. Families hugged, travelers rushed past. Ethan carried his backpack, worn and too small, and his notebook under his arm like a shield. As the bus pulled away, he pressed his forehead against the window. Willow Creek disappeared slowly, houses and fields melting into the night. He whispered to the passing lights, "One day, all of you will know my name." The first real test had begun. No friends, no safety, no familiar streets. The city did not welcome him. It attacked with noise, with chaos, with unyielding indifference. Skyscrapers loomed like giants. Traffic roared endlessly. People moved with purpose he did not yet understand. He stepped onto the sidewalk, notebook clutched, and felt smaller than he had ever felt in Willow Creek. It was not the size of the city that intimidated him. It was the realization that in this place, survival required more than dreams. Ethan had no apartment, no contacts, no place to stay. He wandered the streets until midnight, looking for a hostel cheap enough to scrape together the money for. The glow of streetlights barely touched the cracks in the sidewalks. The occasional shout from a distant alley reminded him that the city never slept, nor did it forgive. Finally, he found a room for $35 a night, cramped, cold, smelled faintly of mold, but it was safe enough to sleep, safe enough to think, safe enough to plan. He lay on the thin mattress and opened his notebook. Plans, sketches, ideas. Even here, in the unfamiliar, he refused to stop dreaming. Money was a challenge he hadn't fully anticipated. Restaurants, cafes, retail stores, delivery gigs, temp agencies, everywhere he was too inexperienced, too young, too unknown. But he persisted. 3 shifts at a cafe, nights delivering packages, early mornings running errands. Exhaustion became routine, hunger became a silent companion. And yet, every night he returned to his notebook. Every night the ideas grew sharper, more defined. Every night the city's indifference fueled him instead of breaking him. In a dingy internet cafe, he met Samir, a fellow dreamer from another small town. Samir had tried and failed once in the city, just like Ethan. "You've got fire in your eyes, kid," Samir said, sipping cheap coffee, "but fire alone won't pay rent." They laughed, shared stories, strategies, failures, small victories. For the first time, Ethan felt less alone, not safe, but accompanied. Samir introduced him to contacts for odd jobs, helped him navigate the temp agencies, and offered encouragement when the city's weight threatened to crush him. Weeks turned into months. Ethan learned that talent meant nothing without exposure. Ideas meant nothing without execution. Money meant nothing without opportunity. His initial savings dwindled quickly. Rent, food, public transport, copies of his resume, internet cafe fees, all consumed his funds faster than he anticipated. Nights were long, often spent on park benches when hostels were full. Hunger gnawed, fatigue clouded judgment, hope flickered dangerously. and yet he did not quit. Ethan's first real big breakthrough came from a small local shop, a tiny bookstore tucked into an alley barely visible from the street. He approached the owner with a simple idea. Let me help you reach more readers online. I can create a digital presence, simple ads, posts, small investment, high return. The owner was skeptical. Who are you, kid? No investors, no guarantees, just results, Ethan replied. The bookstore agreed. A week later, they saw measurable results. Sales increased slightly. Foot traffic improved. The owner smiled. Kid, you might be onto something. It wasn't the breakthrough of a lifetime, but it was the first proof that he could make a dent in reality. The city taught lessons on no textbook could. Some employers would exploit his labor. Some clients would steal his ideas. Some nights, the streets themselves seemed dangerous, with shadows moving too fast to identify. Ethan learned vigilance, negotiation, strategy, survival. He began carrying two phones, one for work, one personal. He learned which alleys to avoid, which temp agencies were scams, which contacts could be trusted. Every setback was data, every failure a lesson, and slowly the city began to feel navigable. At a small entrepreneur meetup, Ethan tried to pitch his ideas. Corporate types, investors, even other startups, all skeptical. You're too young, you don't have traction, you don't know the market. He swallowed each dismissal, nodded politely. Inside, the fire burned brighter. He wrote notes, adjusted his pitch, rehearsed answers, learned from their questions. The city may have doubted him, but it could not extinguish his ambition. Months later, Ethan secured three more clients, small stores willing to make a chance on his digital marketing service. He reinvested every dollar into better tools, internet access, and small advertising. No vacations, no luxuries, no distractions. Only growth, only focus, only the dream. And every night he returned to his notebook, refining, rewriting, dreaming bigger. He began to whisper to himself, softly, one day, every no will become my yes. Late one night, sitting on the roof of a hostel, looking at the city lights stretching endlessly, Ethan realized the journey had just begun. The city doesn't care, he muttered to the stars, but I will make it care. I will make my name matter, and I will never look back. The notebook lay open beside him, pages filled with ideas, sketches, and a map of his vision. The boy who left a small town with almost nothing had begun to grow into the man who would one day be unstoppable. Ethan Marshall had survived the city's first trials, the relentless grind, the cold streets, the endless no's. He had carved a small path forward, and for a moment hope felt tangible. But the first real leap, that one that demanded everything, was about to test him like never before. Because ambition is a double edged sword, and sometimes the hardest lessons come wrapped in dreams. Ethan's notebook overflowed with ideas. Every night, sketches, strategies, revenue projections, and marketing plans sprawled across pages. The city had given him lessons, yes, but it had also whispered temptations, shortcuts that promised growth, shortcuts that promised recognition. He had an idea, a digital marketplace connecting small businesses directly to customers in ways no one else had tried. It was ambitious, revolutionary in his mind, and terrifying. The first spark of excitement, an idea that could change everything, quickly became an obsession. Ethan poured every dollar into servers, basic design software, and minimal advertising. He rented a tiny office space, a windowless room above a laundromat. The smell of detergent mixed with the faint aroma of cheap coffee, a small taste of the real world, raw and unfiltered. He hired a freelance developer he met online, two part-time marketers, and a designer who believed in the dream more than the paycheck. The team was small, inexperienced, and idealistic, but they had passion, and passion, Ethan reminded himself, was everything. Launch day arrived like a storm. The website went live, social media posts were scheduled, small ads ran in local newspapers. Ethan sat at his desk, heart pounding, hands trembling. It was time to see if all the effort, all the sleepless nights, all the sacrifices would pay off. And at first, it seemed like it might. A handful of users signed up, a few local shops sent inquiries, and notifications on his laptop dinged with life. Hope surged. Then came the first complaints. Your site crashed during checkout. Where is my listing? My payment didn't go through. Ethan scrambled. Emails, phone calls, troubleshooting sessions. The team worked tirelessly, often late into the night, and still more issues arose, more complaints, more users leaving, frustrated, confused. The dream began to feel heavier than it had ever been. Ethan had invested everything, every dollar, every hour, every ounce of energy into this launch. Rent, salaries, software licenses, advertising, food. The numbers added up faster than anticipated. Every failure on the website meant lost revenue. Every frustrated user meant wasted marketing dollars. He spent nights calculating, recalculating, trying to find a way to make the project sustainable. Sleep became a distant memory, food became an afterthought, and doubt whispered in every quiet moment. Maybe you're not ready, maybe you never will be. Pressure revealed cracks. The freelance developers started disappearing, missing deadlines, making excuses. The designer argued over minor details that no one would notice. The marketers questioned the feasibility, saying the model was too complex for small businesses. Ethan tried to hold the team together, tried to inspire, tried to remind them of the vision. But vision alone can't pay the bills, nor can it patch a broken website, or mend frayed nerves, or silence a growing chorus of skepticism. Within months, the launch attracted attention, but not in the way Ethan hoped. Local news picked up a story. New startup fails to impress small businesses. Bloggers criticized the platform's glitches. Friends and family from Willow Creek called, not with encouragement, but with polite curiosity that felt like judgment. Even his mother, Clara, struggled to comfort him. She hugged him tightly, whispering, "You tried. That's what matters." But he could feel her fear, the fear he had always known she carried. 6 months after launch, the platform had fewer users than day one. Revenue was nearly non existent. Investors were gone. The team had dissolved, taking their frustrations and leaving only a skeleton crew behind. Ethan sat in the empty office, staring at the screens. The servers hummed faintly, mocking him. His bank account flashed negative. Phone lines went unanswered. For the first time since leaving Willow Creek, Ethan considered quitting. He found himself back in a shelter, temporarily homeless after mismanaged funds led to eviction. The streets felt familiar now, yet cruel. Exhaustion weighed down his body. Shame gnawed at his spirit. Even hope seemed to retreat, hiding behind walls of debt and disappointment. Ethan avoided calls from friends, avoided social media, avoided mirrors, because every reflection reminded him of failure. One rainy night, a homeless man sat beside him and said quietly, "You only fail when you stop trying." Ethan said nothing, but those words cut deeper than any insult, any mockery he had endured. Ethan returned to the basics. He abandoned high-concept dreams for smaller, achievable goals. Fix computers for neighbors, run small digital marketing campaigns, reinvest every penny earned into measurable results. He began documenting every failure meticulously, learning from mistakes he had once ignored, glitches in the website, miscommunications with clients, even personal burnout. Every error became a lesson for the next attempt, and slowly the spark of ambition rekindled. Ethan realized a painful truth. Ambition is not a straight line. It is jagged, fractured, full of sudden drops. Failure is not a verdict, it is a guide. He learned humility, he learned patience, he learned resilience. And most importantly, he learned that the world rarely rewards talent alone. It rewards persistence, it rewards endurance. Late one night, sitting under the glow of a flickering streetlight, notebook in hand, Ethan whispered, "One day, this failure will be the foundation for something bigger, something stronger, something they will not mock, because it will be undeniable." The first startup had collapsed, but the fire inside Ethan Marshall had not, and as the city breathed around him, indifferent, chaotic, and harsh, he smiled, because the next attempt would be different. The next attempt would matter. He closed his notebook, determination burning brighter than exhaustion, doubt, or ridicule. The boy who had once been laughed at in classrooms, mocked in hallways, and humiliated on stage was still standing, and this time he would not fall. Failure has a way of reshaping a person. Some let it define them, some let it destroy them. Ethan Marshall, however, let it teach him. Ethan returned to a tiny apartment above a laundromat, the same one he had first rented in the city. The space smelled faintly of detergent and damp carpets. The furniture was minimal, just a folding table, a chair, and a mattress. Yet, in that small, humble space, he felt more alive than he had in months. He spread out his notebooks across the table, filled with scribbles, charts, and ideas from the first failed startup. Each page was a reminder, not of defeat, but of lessons. The first attempt was too big. He whispered, too ambitious, too fast, too many moving parts. He realized the solution: smaller, smarter, safer. Ethan decided to focus on local small businesses, restaurants, boutique shops, and service providers who had no digital presence, no large platform, no investors, no high risk ideas. Instead, he offered a service people could immediately use, help them create websites, manage social media, and advertise online. It was modest, it was achievable, it was exactly what the city needed, and exactly what he could deliver. The first client was Maria's Bakery, a tiny shop that barely survived on foot traffic. She was skeptical. "Kid, I've seen people promise the world and fail." Ethan nodded. "I know, but I'm not asking you to believe me. Just try." He worked tirelessly, created posts, scheduled promotions, engaged with customers online. Within weeks, foot traffic increased, sales rose, Maria smiled more. Word spread. One small success became a second, a third, then a waiting list. Ethan now had 10 small clients. Each one brought in revenue that covered rent, software, and minimal salaries. He hired a part-time assistant to help with calls and emails. No fancy offices, no flashy ads, just consistent, reliable results. And every night he returned to the roof of the laundromat, notebook in hand, sketching ideas, refining strategies, dreaming bigger. Slowly, Ethan's name began circulating. Other local businesses mentioned him. "That kid, yeah, he actually delivers." Bloggers wrote small pieces on his work. A regional business magazine featured a story: "Young entrepreneur revives small shops in the city." It was validation, but Ethan knew better. Validation alone does not build empires, it only opens doors. Growth brought challenges. Some clients were demanding, some deadlines impossible. He worked 12 to 14 hours daily, sometimes more. Sleep became scarce, meals irregular, stress constant. His assistant complained about hours, freelancers occasionally disappeared, and in quiet moments, Ethan questioned if he was truly ready to lead anything beyond 10 small businesses. But quitting was no longer an option. One rainy morning, Ethan received a call from a regional retail chain. They had heard about his work and were considering a pilot digital marketing project. His heart raced. If successful, this contract would triple his revenue and expand his reputation beyond the city. He pitched, overprepared, rehearsed every detail. The regional executives nodded. They were skeptical but willing to try. Ethan left the meeting drenched in rain, fists clenched in quiet triumph, a small victory but a monumental step forward. Scaling brought complexity. More clients meant more employees, more communication, more oversight. Errors began creeping in. Missed emails, forgotten deadlines, client frustration. Ethan realized leadership was not just about vision, it was about management, patience, and empathy. He began daily check ins, simple project trackers, and stricter systems. Every failure, every minor hiccup became another lesson. The city had taught him to survive, now it taught him to lead. As the second startup gained traction, former classmates and colleagues began noticing. Some congratulated him, some mocked him quietly, unable to believe a small town kid had persisted. Ethan ran into a familiar face one morning at a networking event, a boy who had laughed at him during high school. Ethan, is that? Yes, Ethan replied calmly. It's me. The room felt silent for a moment. He didn't gloat, he didn't rub it in. He simply smiled and moved on. Ethan's revenue now covered all expenses. He could rent a proper apartment, buy a laptop that didn't crash every 2 hours, eat more than instant noodles. It wasn't luxury, it wasn't wealth, but it was freedom. The first real freedom he had known outside Willow Creek. And with freedom came clarity. He could think bigger, plan better, dream wider. Small businesses began referring each other to him. Word of mouth became his most powerful marketing tool. The city started to see Ethan as reliable, capable, and innovative. Local press interviews increased, speaking opportunities at small entrepreneur forums appeared. Even investors started sending cautious inquiries. Ethan learned to pace himself, say no to distractions, to focus on consistent growth, not instant fame. Late one night on the rooftop of his small apartment, Ethan looked at the city lights, stretching endlessly. He whispered softly, almost as a prayer, this is just the beginning. One day they will know my name. One day they will see the persistence over doubt. One day the city will remember the boy they overlooked. He opened his notebook, pen in hand, and wrote down a single phrase in bold letters. Next attempt. Unstoppable. The second startup had succeeded where the first had failed, but it was not yet the empire he dreamed of. It was the foundation, and foundations he knew could support anything.